3 different publications, 3 different mock drafts, 2 different mock draft positions, and 2 different players. That's right, 2 of these different publications converged on the very same player for the Kansas City Chiefs in a mock draft scenario. Strangely, those are 2 of the places that have the Chiefs taking a player in different positions. We're going to talk through this a little bit in attempt to get caught up with the upcoming draft class just a little bit. CBS and Tankathon both have the Kansas City Chiefs taking Aireontae Ursery, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. CBS has them taking him 32nd. Tankathon has the Kansas City Chiefs drafting 29th overall. They will have to explain themselves at some point, but that point is not right now. CBS of this pick said the following: 6'6", 330 pounds, with Ursery, and 2024 second round selection Kingsley Suamataia. The Chiefs have their bookend tackles for a long time. Now, just to sort of jump ahead of things here, either of these selections would be a bit disappointing, I think, for Chiefs fans, because we've seen a lot of these players picked and very few of them pan out recently. So for either an offensive tackle or an edge player to be picked in the first round, it would suggest that even more of the Chiefs' well-laid plans of mice and men have gone awry. Now, as for Aireontae Ursery himself, he is an interesting prospect. Not as interesting as who Pro Football Network has the Kansas City Chiefs taking, but Ursery is someone who I think will realistically be there at the 32 spot. This would be an interesting pick for the following reason. It would mean that you have a player in Wanya Morris, who is destined to be a career swing tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, or it would mean that Aireontae Ursery is just too good of a talent to pass up at 32. I'm not sure in my studies of this player that I necessarily see him as substantially better than Wanya Morris, let alone Jawaan Taylor. Hypothetically, at the 32 spot, Ursery would be coming in to be the right tackle in Kansas City. This would also mean that the Chiefs were likely to move on from Jawaan Taylor at the conclusion of this season. So that would be something of a confounding pick, though. Look, I'm always for drafting offensive linemen. I don't know that the value is really there with Aireontae Ursery at 32. Obviously, that is the last pick in the first round, so is it really a first rounder? It may as well, for all intents and purposes, be a second rounder, but it is also, I do think that he is more of a second round talent to my reading of things. He might be a third round talent. I don't think that we have necessarily seen the consistency that you would have to say, yeah, this guy is definitely a top 32 pick in the NFL draft. The possibilities with Aireontae Ursery as a Kansas City Chief become myriad, but not starkly greater, I think, than what the Kansas City Chiefs have now. You have Jawaan Taylor under contract again in 2025. You have, obviously, Kingsley Suamataia under contract through 2029. Yeah? 2028 or 2029. I'm not doing math right now, guys. I apologize. But one of those seasons, you have Wanya Morris for 2 more years. You have Ethan Driscoll on a UDFA contract, and I haven't looked into it, but normally those are 3-year deals so long as he stays on the active roster. You just drafted 2 interior linemen. You have Trey Smith, who you are looking ostensibly to re-sign. You have, obviously, Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney. I don't know that there's a whole lot of room on that offensive line right now for flyers, so long as no one falls off completely or proves themselves expendable to the Kansas City Chiefs. So that would be look, I'm all for drafting offensive linemen. If the Kansas City Chiefs can all of a sudden overnight have an elite offensive line, left tackle to right tackle, this team becomes nearly unstoppable. But I'd like to move on here from that to the Pro Football Network and what they had the Kansas City Chiefs taking in the draft here. We have Kingsley, and now Pro Football Network says that at 32, the Kansas City Chiefs will draft Princely Umanmielen. 100% possible. I am slaughtering that last name still. You may have noticed with Kingsley Sumatai, there is a disconnect between my mouth and my brain, and sometimes the things that I think I'm saying are apparently not the things that are coming across through sound. To explain this pick, they say the Chiefs have gotten the Week 1 win over the Ravens, but one of the team's biggest knocks was that the defensive line, specifically on the edge, failed to get consistent pressure. This failed to get consistent pressure is a misreading of the game of football, I'm afraid. What you don't want to do with a guy like Lamar Jackson is just go haphazardly upfield and end up giving Lamar Jackson the ability to cut under you and just go running free-for-all through your secondary. That is a problem. That falsely buys the Ravens extra time to throw the ball. We actually saw maybe the biggest culprit of this was George Karlaftis himself, who was constantly pushing his offensive tackle upfield and then cutting under him, which gives then Lamar Jackson the ability to roll out. Now, I get it. At some point, you're just getting frustrated with the way that Lamar Jackson is still putting up numbers, but putting up numbers and putting up points are different things. So I actually think the Chiefs' defensive line did fairly decent in that game. Felix Enudike-Uzoma has not been productive to this point, and while George Karlaftis is a stellar presence, he can be limited on his own. In this 2025 NFL mock draft, the Chiefs attack this deficiency with a different kind of physical talent, Princely Umanmielen. At 6'4", 255 pounds, basically the same size as Felix, Umanmielen has the components to source a deadly power arsenal, and he's already a deadly finesse rusher with his volcanic one-step burst, speed around the arc, and gravity-defying bend capacity. Now, I point out that he's essentially the same size as Felix Enudike-Uzoma. I think he's taller than Felix, and I am willing to bet bottom dollar he has longer arms than Felix. This guy has a freakish build. His 6'4", 255 pounds does not look like your average 6'4", 255, if there is such a thing. Umanmielen, in my opinion, is unlikely to be there at the end of the first round. If he is, whether it is disappointing or not from the standpoint that the Kansas City Chiefs have used recent first-round picks on both George Karlaftis and Felix Enudike-Uzoma, in addition to the one multi-year contract before Creed Humphrey that Brett Veach had given out to someone he had drafted, really, was Mike Dana. So, not to mention that last year, the one guy that was really brought in for this the one guy who was really brought in free agency last season was Charles Omenihu. So Brett Veach doesn't like to make too many splashes in free agency, and Charles Omenihu was one of them, who has now is going to miss most of 2 seasons, his 2 seasons with the Kansas City Chiefs so far, so we will see what that means. But it may seem, in my opinion, disappointing on the surface that, oh, well, here go the Chiefs spending another first-round pick on a defensive end. Guys, Princely is a different beast. Princely is an extremely explosive athlete. I think Princely is going to be one of these players that comes in and absolutely dominates the combine and probably the pro day circuit as well. So would it be ultimately disappointing to see Princely Umanmielen drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs? It might feel that way. George Karlaftis is already coming up on what will be the final end of his rookie deal in Kansas City. This is the second year for Felix Anudike-Uzomah. He might, I don't know if he's going to get that fifth-year option taken on him, which means that he could be at the end of this season halfway through his rookie contract. So it might just be that at the end of this season, it's time to get another defensive end. I do think, however, cornerback is a real threat in the first round for the Kansas City Chiefs this season if you start to look at the glut of talent at that position this year. That is all I have for this video. Sorry to get this out so late. If you like or appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about. So consider hitting that subscribe button. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.